the gist of today is going to be more, I guess, more relaxed than others. We do have slides because obviously we have gems that we want to pass on to you. But this is your chance to ask us pretty much anything and everything that you want. Obviously, with the disclaimer that we can't spoon feed you everything because we obviously signed agreements that we can't reveal too many secrets. But we'll go as much as is known, if that makes sense.
And congratulations to everyone who's got an interview coming up soon. It's a good opportunity to just ask us anything you've got in the meantime, in the run-up to your interviews, really.
But I'm happy to start when you guys are.
Cool. Right, so yeah, we'll just run through some slides and then we'll open up to the floor for general questions and answers. Over to you, Ollie.
My internet's been playing up a bit today, guys, so sorry if I'm a bit delayed. I'll just stop talking if I am too bad. But basically said, everything that we say in this series and in these individual talks represent the views only of the person speaking. We're all doctors employed by the NHS, and nothing that we say reflects the views or positions of our NHS trusts. We're not talking about clinical advice this time, but as no questions, please, about what comes up in specific interviews, because it's not kind of candidates in general. And it's also not very, you need to be preparing general competency skills, not preparing for a particular set of questions, because if they don't, you will be good.
Except that's not necessarily the case for clinical, where you can pretty much rehearse all of the scripts and protocols because they will come up.
True. Sorry, Alex, do you want to move on to your intro slide?
That's okay, no worries. Hi everyone, Alex, trained at UCL, work at the Royal Free Trust. Those are my rotations, and looking forward to doing academic urology in the future.
And there's Ollie.
I'm an F2 working up in Newcastle, hoping to do something in the neuroscience, surgery or neuroradiology. And I'm coming into my academic block next. I will be quite prescient from tonight.
And then I'm Aqua, went to Leicester, now I'm at Royal Surrey, and I'm part of these academic units. I'm moving on to stroke after after having a blast in Gen Surge. And similar to Alex, I want to be an academic urologist too. I'll hand over.
Okay. So as we're nearing the end of our 8-week program, we're now in week 7. People are starting to get interviews, and very soon people will be getting offers. And around the corner, you'll be starting to select your jobs. So this is just a quick reminder about factors to consider when choosing your program, whether it's the SFP or normal foundation program. One of the big ones is obviously location. So you've selected 1 or 2 deaneries to apply to, but within that, there are also, sub-locations. Do you want to work at a specific hospital or a specific university for your affiliation? So for instance, if you want to do neurosurgery, is working at UCL beneficial to be affiliated with UCL and Queen Square Neurology Neurosurgery, for instance? Other things to consider are the clinical jobs. So obviously you'll have 6 in the foundation program and 5 in a specialized foundation program. Which jobs do you want to be doing, and are there certain jobs you'd like to avoid, for instance? And then looking at your academic jobs, what are the research projects detailed in the program for your units of application? So do have a look over what they are and whether they're very specific about what you can do. To some degree, there is flexibility in the type of project and type of supervisor you can arrange yourself. But if the application program specifies exactly what the project is, there's probably less flexibility there. And another thing to consider is the academic duration and frequency. So most jobs will have one academic block, but for instance, Ollie is very lucky and fortunate to have 2 academic blocks. And also, how are these blocks divided up? Is it a 1 month, 1 4-month block, or they, like for instance in Oxford, you get maybe 1 day a week? And also, where is this academic block located in your program, as we'll come to in a second? And also the order of your jobs. Where in the order of your jobs do you want to have your academic? And for instance, if you want to be doing academic surgery, do you want to have the surgical job first and then do research afterwards, or do you want it to have the other way around? So now we'll just go into some very important points on how to rank your programs. So it's quite a demanding job to actually rank the jobs, as I'm sure Aqua and Ollie can tell you. Just to look at these examples here, the London SFP Deanery has 106 jobs, which is down from about 135 last year. And for the foundation program alone, North London has 600 plus jobs, and South London itself has over 300 jobs. And when it comes to the time, how are you going to go through all X hundred jobs and look at each program and decide which one do you really want to do? That's going to take you hours, and people, have different methods, reading every single one. But next week, I'm going to show you the most efficient way to rank all of them, to kind of automate it, set your preferences, and then rank them in, a couple of minutes. And then after that, all you have to do is transfer that to Oriel. So that's what we'll be covering next week, and we'll show you the ins and outs of how to do this the most efficient way. So now we'll just cover some brief important things to consider during SFP. So as Ollie will flick through, we'll just run through a timeline. So this is a timeline. So in about August, after your finals, you'll start FY1. You'll be starting in August with your rotation 1. You'll then be rotating in December into rotation 2. In April, the following year, you'll move on to rotation 3. And, providing you pass off all your sign-offs, you'll move into FY2. You'll now be starting rotation 4. Shortly after that, rotation 5, again in December, and rotation 6. And soon after that, you'll be moving on to your next post, whether this be an ACF, core training, maybe an F3. So where are you now in this cycle? You're at the very beginning. And one important thing to consider is that it looks like you've got 6 rotations before you move to your next job, but in reality, the next round of applications are the beginning of F2. So you only really have 3 rotations or 1 year to be preparing for this. And an important thing to notice, if you're looking to apply for the next academic step, the ACF, your academic block is most likely going to be in F2. It's very rarely in F1, but most of the time in F2. And it could be in either 4, 5, or 6. And as shown here, your application will be during rotation 4. So if your academic block is rotation 6, is that a disadvantage that you've had no academic experience yet and you're going straight to ACF applications? Whereas if it's during rotation 4, maybe you've had some academic experience, you can talk about it as well. So those are factors to consider as well in terms of picking your jobs. Other things to think about are additional courses you may have to do, conferences, membership exams, and also postgraduate degrees if you're interested. These are lots of things to consider, and you're going to have to find time and space in your busy rota over these 2 years to try and fit them in as well, and to also consider the next round of applications. Do you need to do some of this within the next 12 months as well? So these are all important things to consider, and to also appreciate the kind of reduced timeline you have over the next 2 years. I'll hand over to Ollie now.
Oh, thanks, Alex. And I think Buff raised a really, really important point, which is that we often think about specialties and next stage after F2 because we talk about them in the timeline. but obviously we apply for things a year in advance, and so in turn it's more correct to think of them really being as after effort. A slightly frustrating element to the way that our training works, where SFP really, I think, was to allow people who wanted to research or enter the academic pathway to support them to do so. The problem, the way it is, really supports people who are already doing research, which is then how they get the AFP job or the SFP job and go and move that forward into academic training, because really you're in full-time clinical during F1, and that means it's just something to be aware of, that a bit more competitive, like anesthetics, surgery. If you're little audits and things like that, and you want them to be ready, you shouldn't be waiting for your academic block unless you want to take a year out and do, or be a locum or something else. So it's just something to consider. If you want to go straight through, then the academic block is too late to help you with that. So just something to bear in mind. Thank you, Pim. Put that on the slides. So I've just got 3 kids, which are things that you can be doing now, and before you know that you're going to be an SFP doctor, which hope not everyone will, but it's really important to, obviously not being an SFP doesn't stop you from doing any of these things that you might want to do. You can always projects, papers, whatever. But the first thing to think about is careers. It's thinking about this SFP program going to fit into your overall career program. And this is something that you will no doubt be asked at interview anyway. You should go in with an answer. Have you applied for this one? What are you actually going to fit your 10-year plan or your 5-year plan or whatever it is you have? So you've got a day a week or 4 months of time to, right? 4 months of paid time. So what are you going to do? Are you going to develop a particular skill you might want to in that time? It could be something clinical. You might say, look, not employed all the time, I'm going to learn to do arterial lines, or I'm point of care ultrasound, or you could use that time productively. Go on and got the time. It might be something like getting the area of research. Alex has already mentioned specialties like urology and neurosym. Subspecialties are a very long way away from, I suppose, not too far away. If you want to do pediatrics, thing where their subspecialty training starts more towards the middle of their training. If you want to do interventional radiology, say, as opposed to then if you've never had any experience in that area, to go and start getting involved in interventional radiology research, so that at ST4 or whenever it is, when the time comes, you're better prepared and you can say, I've research done in my academic block. And it might be methodology, and this is what I chose to do with my academic blocks. I've never done any qualitative research before, or certainly never been involved with leading research. I'm going to use this space, sit down and think, and become familiar with qualitative methods. And the one that I've used is thematic analysis. I couldn't do it myself before my first academic block, but now I can. Something that I can now take to other projects because I've had the time and space to do it properly under academic supervision. And again, once you've ideated, come up with a basic plan. How are you going to do it? I'm sorry, Akko, I'll go to the next one anyway. I think it covers what I was going to say. Because this kind of goes into the second funding, and I suppose in brackets, put support as well. This is going to be almost the backbone to your life as an academic doc, limited or not limited, often by the structures that are available to you. You know, many academic units will offer a funded qualification, whether that is a certificate in something like leadership or research or education for a particular certificate or accredited qualification in something. I know a fellowship of the medical leadership group, whatever the you may want some teaching opportunity and have that be a bit more structured, supported training to allow you to apply for your associateship of the Higher Education Academy Authority. Something that people want, and again, something that I was able to build into my academic block and say, I want to do some teaching in a supported and accredited way. It'd be about funding to attendances, or interesting if you said, you know, I want to get into artificial intelligence or something, and this course that's running at this university over 6 weeks, can you do that? And most places, I think, would say yes and fund you for it because it's part of your development. And Alex has already mentioned that you're allied to particular universities and universities here. I think Aqua is affiliated with about 6. Can you make the most of those resources? So for me, with my academic, any lecture from any program that runs in the medical school, ever pay for it. It's so if I want to go along to a statistics module, I just have to email them and go along. Slide. To do with the specifics of your project, and it's something I was quite anxious about. Is I'd heard about having a project lined up and already knowing exactly what they were going to do. Now, project in place before you apply to the SFP, and equally just binned up. It doesn't mean that you will get the SFP or be more likely to get the SFP. But what is important, I think, is to have a basic idea of what you want to do. And again, this might be asked about in the interview. Who you might want as a supervisor. Aqua and Alex want to do urology, for example. So knowing urologist might be able to supervise them or has experience in the thing, that's obviously going to be really important. What support exists that you already know of? Just this, talking about courses, funding, other forms of support that exist, actually need to do the type of work that you want to do. For example, if you are looking at something robotic surgery, for example, then a site with robots, right? Or if you do a medical education research project, probably something with qualitative element, a senior doctor or a professor of medical education to support you in order for you to do a good job. The thing that I want to talk about is ethics, because, and this is why you need discussion early. You've got to remember that if you want to do a project, it has to be achieved scope of your SFP, and normally that's 4 months or a day a week over a year or whatever. If you want to do anything NHS patients, getting the approval for that can take several months by itself. NHS, and it has to come back, and it takes forever. I would actively advise against. I think it's a bad idea. Scope of an SFP. It might, but it's one of those ones where if you were due to start as Alex in August, maybe, and you were on an academic block in your first job of F1, which is possible, then you need to be getting your ethics in place by like March to make sure it's all done. Equally, if you're going into F2, be getting I'm seeing a snap in the messages. It's just making sure that everything is ready to hit the ground run academic job and not turning up on day one and finding out, oh no, we do anything for 3 months. And by which time I've wasted my academic. So that's all. Have a good senior discussion about what will basically either say, no, this isn't feasible, or it is feasible. It is feasible, providing you can get ethical approval in place, which X. All of these things are good things to do before you start.
And now, thank you, Ollie and Alex, for that. But now I'd like to open it for questions for our audience, because, you know, if you guys have come here, you've probably got a question, maybe, I'm assuming.
I'm muted. This is just an open roundtable. Any questions that you have about anything that we've said just now, or process, or being an academic doctor, we'll discuss it.
Yep. Alex, do you want to take Elsa's first question?
I think you need to check the small print on the applications. Don't take what I say exactly, but I think you may be able to count this if it's a poster presentation. But if it's an oral presentation, don't think you can. Or does that apply to prizes?
In terms of prizes, it's similar, because when it comes to prizes, if it's an oral presentation, for example, you know how you won one of the Learn Malcolm blah, blah, prize. As much as I would love to claim it as my own victory, I can't, because that was your oral delivery. Whereas if we won a poster prize together, then we could both claim it. That's how I interpret prizes. And also, when it comes to the fine print, usually in your Oriel form, correct me if I'm wrong, Elsa, but I think it specifies, is it delivered by you or is it delivered by another person? But at least when it comes to, you know, now, if you've got your interview already, they're only looking for a presentation of some sort of like recognizable body. So they will count it regardless. Oh, you're applying next year. Okay. Yeah. So if you're applying for the SFP next year, then as long as you're an author, that's fine. You don't need to be first author. You don't need to be presenting. It'll still count.
Yeah. So also, I've just checked the London Deanery this year's application guide. The presentations, it just says the applicant must be a named author on the presentation. It doesn't specify if you have presented it. Although it'd be better if you did, but it doesn't specify it. So I think it's you can assume that. But I think what we've just said applies to prizes as well.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And Ollie, do you want to answer?
So the rules may change.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry, Aqua.
No, the rules may change, but I think that would be very mean.
Happens though, doesn't it? Look at CST.
Whatever. Don't even. Wait, do you want to answer Joanna's question?
Joanna says, available lectures and programs we can attend during the SFP. You two other guys to say, because I'm sure things are very, very different at UCL, maybe different or not. My experience when I was looking is that most places, well, the UKFPO website is generally terrible. the information that is available to candidates is also not very good and out of their way to spell things out. Anywhere that actively said, here is a list of things that you can attend. You kind of, and so for example, Newcastle made mention, university member of staff, you can attend things. That as a prompt to then go and look at what modules were running, identified things like medical ethics, medical statistics, them long before I get anywhere near the program, and that's something that I'd advise people do. Again, I'd invite Aqua and Alex to give theirs.
Yeah, and I think Alex can definitely chip in, but because me and Alex are currently the same deanery, even though now it's split, we get regular emails telling us we've got different webinars or different teaching things available. So like, Alex, you recently just went to a big North London teaching thing, didn't you? And I think our deanery will regularly hold those type of things.
Yeah, so as Aqua's just mentioned, more or less the same things. So for instance, UCL specifically, because Aqua and I both hold affiliations there, we get weekly emails advertising events or talks, interesting talks, especially within our department and division. So that's one place. Otherwise, for instance, North London, there's a small committee that's been set up to deliver teaching each rotation. So we get emails about the teaching that's offered, and there was just one this week in person at UCL. So mainly via email.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, as Zaim said, I know Northwest, I remember there's a deanery that specifies the impact factor for max points needs to be like more than 6 or something. I remember reading that and I was like, what the hell? That's crazy. I know. Like, genuinely, they were very prescriptive. Yeah, very brutal. So yes, you're right, Zaim. With Northwest England, that deanery, unfortunately, you won't get the points. Whereas London, I feel like you would, even though London is more perceived as competitive. Always read the fine print, but as far as we know, as long as you're an author, for the vast majority, it'll count for CST and your future applications as well as your SFP.
I'll just go back to Joanna's second point about medical statistics. Again, it's worth checking up the program references for each one of the descriptions. So I know at least for London, the SFPs, especially for Imperial, their research programs are very vague, and they offer very good descriptions about the academic block is about trying to increase your academic knowledge and skills. So they actually offer you courses. And Imperial in particular, I know, offer each trainee £1,500 in funding. And you can use that for conferences, travel, and if you can explain why a certain course like coding or statistics is relevant to your research, they will fund that for you. So depending on your block and your location, there is funding to do courses in these as well.
Yeah, and going to the next one, I have an idea of how I plan to balance clinical and academic duties during an SFP. Is there perhaps anything you don't know exists until you actually get there? Do you mean, Ibrahim, do you mean during your academic block, or do you mean in general during your foundation program? Because in reality, at least for me and Alex, I think I'm speaking on behalf of you, Alex, sorry. I think our F1 is pretty standard to our normal, like, clinical colleagues, our normal foundation, like, colleagues. Like, there is no difference in terms of balancing. But that's because, I guess, Alex and I, we work on very similar studies together. So we are balancing clinical and academic time already. But do you mind just expanding on exactly which section you're talking about, Ibrahim?
So whilst we wait for Ibrahim to respond, maybe we'll go to Saren's question. Maybe go to Ollie first, because you've had more experience than Aqua and I. What do you think is a realistic amount of output from the SFP Ollie?
I think it depends. It depends what you want and want it, I think, is the first thing to say, because what you let's start with the premise that your SFP block is in F2, which it will majority of people, and for a third of people it will for a third it will be in the middle and a third at the end. Someone who last is like probably won't even have their work collected by the end of their academic block, but you're certainly not publishing a paper at the end of your SFP, are you, in 4 months that isn't a letter to the editor or a so I'm going to try and frame this in terms of what I did. That might be an easy way to think about it. So my main qualitative interviews with thematic analysis, first 4 months for me, and this is just something that was agreed with my supervisor, would be getting ethics, getting the data transcribed in the second academic block, which is now in F2. My only job is basically to write up the manuscript and get it submitted. Be starting another second project and gathering the data for that, but there is no expectation that I will be able to write it up or finish it in. But alongside those main projects, was doing things like being involved in systematic review, people in the department. It's focused too heavily on outputs. It's kind of about the whole experience and what about building skills and going on courses and things. That is as important the main project, and you may not get puts within the SFP program that you probably don't, just because of the time involved, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I would like to
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of people will have 1 or 2 projects, and obviously depending on your team and how your team divvies up the presentations, because I know at least for London, at least for us, when it comes to presentations, we'll kind of equally distribute it. So one of us will present in the European one of us will present in the international one in some other random country, one of us will do the UK one. That's how it's divided up, so we all get varying amounts of output. But I would aim for at least 1 or 2 projects, listening to what Ollie said, I think. And I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, and just to chip an extra thing in, as far as I'm aware, there is no minimum requirements regarding output to pass the academic block. I think you just need to meet, any ARCP requirements, and essentially it's just a supervisor sign-off, just to say, you've been proactive, you've been involved in your academic block. There's no, you need to get X amount of publications or presentations from it, because I think that's quite unrealistic, just, to put into perspective. You can definitely aim high. So I know there are current ACFs who've been involved in a systematic review since their SFP. It's taken them 2 years, and it's just come out in, I think, Lancet Gastroenterology or something like that. So, some things will take a long time, but as with any publication, it takes time. So just factor that in.
Yeah, and I'd like to now answer Joanna's question. And I'm putting you on the spot, Joanna, okay? So bear with me. What does a cohort study look at? Is a cohort study looking at outcome/disease status, or is it looking at exposure status? If you answer that, you'll be able to answer your question. Okay, so outcome. Yeah, case control does outcome, and cohort study does exposure. So when we're comparing them, I understand because cohort you usually do prospective, but with a retrospective cohort study, a cohort study you look at the outcome or the exposure status, whereas case control you're looking at disease outcome. I always imagine it as like a chi-square test when it comes to do they have disease or do they not. That is case control because the cases are the ones with the positive disease and the controls are the ones without it. Whereas retrospective, you're still looking at what exposed them to whatever disease it is, irrespective of the time frame that was collected. That's my understanding of the difference between the two. And I very much doubt that they will ask you or they'll show you the difference between it. But if you do, then read up on it and really understand the difference between exposure versus outcome, because it really just means risk factors versus achieved disease state. So yeah, just to recap, case control, they've already got the disease, that's outcome based. Then cohort is looking at exposures or risk factors, irrespective of if it's retrospective or prospective. And then I hope that answers your question. When it comes to Oluwatobi, apart from your main SFP project, is it possible to get involved in other projects your supervisor is involved in during the 2 years of foundation? I would say yes. Oluwatobi, I would heavily ask you to take over some of my projects, man. Okay, there is no stopping you from being involved in as much as you want to do. Like, meet your supervisor early. Because I remember I emailed my supervisor and I added my Twitter and I added my my ORCID ID, and he apparently already looked at my Twitter and already looked at my ORCID ID, and he already knew, okay, yeah, she's lost to urology. It is too far gone. So he already knew that, like, okay, I know that your taster week is going to be in urology, and I know that your interest in academic stuff is going to be urology. So let's not even like lie here. I'll put you in touch with the urology department and you can do whatever you want with them. That is how proactive he was, you know? So really meet them from the get-go and set your not expectations, but really talk to them, because they're here to guide you. They're not here to give you something that you don't want to do, if that makes sense. I guess Alex and Ollie, would you like to chip in?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously dependent on each supervisor. So, you know, if they have other projects they're looking to recruit people to get involved in, then I'm sure they'll get you involved. But, you know, if they're running clinical trials on the side and they're, you know, maximum capacity, probably not. But obviously depends on who your supervisor is.
Yeah, like, although there is nothing stopping you from getting involved in, for example, if your hospital is doing other stuff or is doing like multiple audits, by all means, you can. Just bear in mind that you have your clinical responsibilities too, and you will be physically and mentally drained. That will be your hindrance, I guess. Ollie.
Yeah, absolutely. So just two quick things to say. The first is that Pua and Alex both are now, and I obviously have been, outside of your SFP block, you are the same as everyone else with exactly the same expectations, all the rest of it. So, you know, as you can get involved with other projects alongside F1 that are completely unrelated to F2, it's balancing it alongside everyone else, because you things meet the same standards and be revising for your membership exams and to do. The second thing is, yeah, absolutely is to me. So my supervisor, like I said, has supported me on this qualitative methodologies project. because I'd done that and was now type of analysis that she is an expert in, when the opportunity, they needed someone else for a completely different project they had that needed analyzing, she just said, well, we need someone, why don't you just come and do this? So that's obviously an extra project. It'll be a paper that they've got a vested interest in publishing. So it's, yeah, all about getting stuck in, I think, and being keen and being prepared to put in the graft. But that'll get you far in most things that you do.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's all about what you put in, and I guess how proactive you are, Oluwatobi. I think that is the key. And when it comes to Ollie's supervisor, she is so nice that somehow, as Ollie's partner, I'm also involved in some of your stuff for some reason. How did that happen? God knows.
Okay, going back to Ibrahim. So the academic block itself is quite free, but there are specific requirements involved. So do read the detailed descriptions for each one. So for instance, some of the UCL ones is specifically my academic radiology block. Whilst it's relatively free, get involved projects, that some of them do have clinical commitments. So for instance, I am required to attend the weekly radiology NVC meetings, for instance. Some people in other deaneries I've heard may have an on-call here and there. So it's not completely off, but you do need to check what requirements and commitments there are as well. But, in your time off, you can do whatever you want, projects related to the SFP, projects related outside the SFP. You can do a few locums here and there, go, improve your clinical skills. So for instance, if you need to do some flexible cystoscopies because you've got less clinical time and you're allowed to do that, I'm sure you can go ahead and do that as well. So in summary, just read the small prints because they will specify what's involved.
Yeah, and Ollie, do you want to talk about what you did during your first academic block?
Yeah. So Alex has basically already nicely. You have the way that it was for me. The clinical requirements, that is the foundation competencies, are exactly the same. So despite not being employed, I was still expected to be getting my CBDs, my mini kexes, my other things that you need. You're contributing to audit in QI, various learning experiences, engaging with the weekly teaching. I was required to do the medical on-call for 8 hours a week across the duration of my 4 months, either something like 2 evening on-calls from 5 p.m. till 9 p.m., or sometimes it might be no on-call for the entire weekend on-call for general medicine. I think by trust, I know that some places don't seem to have those clinical requirements, certainly do. So I have to build my academic stuff around my clinical requirements. And actually, but there's an interesting story there where this second project of mine is in neurosurgery, and the neurosurgery team at my hospital actually offered to really support me and get me involved in stuff. And they were like, do you show for 4 months? Like, it'll help with your application to, we'll try selection and all of that. And that's really nice. The problem is it doesn't read on the medical on-call rota. So I'm not completely free to do what I want. I still have a certain set of expectations. And as I've said about mini-kex's CBD, you've still got to pass ARCP. So think about. It seems that some of you already have, so well done.
Yeah. Oh, Alex, do you want to answer Elsa?
Yeah, so Elsa, yours is really quick. So I've just checked the London SFP requirements, and for them it says, quote, confirmation of scoring in top 10% of medical school year for an exam subject. So in summary, yes, getting a letter is useful. And secondly, anything you list on your SFP portfolio, degrees, publications, presentations, prizes, you need to have the evidence for it now. So, is that a certificate? Is there a letter that's been signed? Because what can happen is they will recall a small percentage of all applicants and ask you to submit your evidence of everything you've listed. If you can't produce the letter, certificate for it, I don't know what's going to happen, but it won't, it's going to look really poorly in your application. It's really just a safeguard against falsifying, but it's important to have it regardless anyway for your CVs moving forward. So do collect them now. Especially if you're applying next year, you've got plenty of time, but I would definitely get the evidence ready before you apply.
Yeah, because you just never know if you're going to be the one that's picked on, so just be on the safe side. Amanda, how was your collaboration between you and your other colleagues also doing SFP? Competitiveness or helping each other out or joining forces? So do you mean applying for SFP or during the actual SFP itself, Amanda? And then how was your relationship with supervisors? Okay, I guess Ollie and Alex can also chip in. Do you guys want to?
Yeah, so assuming the first part of your question is regarding preparing for the SFP, I think it was useful. So myself, Aqua, and another friend, we practiced and helped each other. So yes, okay, fine. I presume that means in the application or during the SFP?
During the actual SFP.
Oh, fine. I don't know if I can say much because I'm not on the academic block yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, my SFP colleagues, I know who they are. They're just the same as regular clinical colleagues. So at the moment, can't say much, but I presume during the actual academic block, there won't be any issues. It's all about collaboration.
Yeah, and Ollie, I think all of your SFP mates, you all have dinner and stuff. It's really sweet, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess part of it is there's not that many of us in my deanery. There's only 21 or 2, I think, academic doctors, and then we're obviously at just one site, and I think there's maybe 14 or 15 of us. All of us are across different specialties and things as well. I'm the only person in a med ed SFP specific track, and there's equally only one person in the transplant one and one person. There's no real opportunity to compete if there's not any reason why you would. That might be difficult, where I guess there'll be lots of people wanting to do, people wanting to do neurosurgery, or lots of people wanting to do plastics or where it might be a bit more palpable. But equally, I know there are multiple people here wanting to do ENT and the post that exists here. But I don't think it's a problem. It's been very collaborative, really.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, Amanda, I think with my supervisor, I met him very, very early on, and hopefully he's going to be my academic supervisor for 2 whole years. And it's all just getting, just literally shooting an email and starting that communication out. Because I know Ollie and his supervisor are very close. I'm very close to mine. Alex, have you met yours yet?
No, I've not got in touch yet.
Alex, what are you doing?
I don't know. I'll see, because mine's radiology at the Royal Free. I'll see if I can do radiology at UCLH.
I see.
So I'll see what they say.
Yeah. You'll be fine.
Alex
You'll
is
be fine.
being ground down by being an that's his job at the
Gen
moment.
Surge at Bonnet. It sounds horrific, to be honest.
It's tough. Yeah. So yeah. Next question about UCL hospital. I've got a week of 5 nights coming up soon, so that's gonna be fun. But yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, like Oliver Toby, like it's such a pity because obviously Alex and I are the same deanery and I do research with UCL, but I'm actually at Royal Surrey. And my Gen Surge rotation is a dream compared to what Alex's is. Like I'm in theatre every other day. We hardly have any patients. We discharge them all the time. My regs are really nice. My consultants actually care about who I am. It's actually quite supportive. Yes, it does get stressful. There are moments, but like that's the nature of surgery, right? Some patients can just go off like that. Like today, we just had an iatrogenic OGD perforation. So I had to be on the ground and organize like CPOD and organize like the laparotomy that had to happen. And I had to like beg the anesthetist, just please take him, please. And then he was like, so sorry for me. He was like, your reg should be doing this, but I commend you. You told me all the relevant information. So, like in terms of working here, I feel like I'm supported, and this is going to be a cracking 2-year program for me, if that makes sense. And as Alex said, when we go through how to rank jobs next week, specifically, for me, location was very important. And like Alex is literally right next to home as well. So we have that going for us. Though our jobs though we're both doing Gen Surge, it seems to be quite different.
Yeah, that's not to say that I'm not enjoying my job. I'm actually really enjoying it. It will depend on, staffing levels, how intense is the surgical department at your hospital as well. Geographically, are you more, in the peripheries compared to central hospitals? So those all feed in. But in terms of your question regarding UCL as an academic unit, I think it's going well. So for me, I trained at UCL, I'm staying at UCL. So for me, there's no difference in the continuity. It's just been the same for me. Aqua's been at UCL for a while as well. And I think for both of us, we really benefit, from, I posted in the chat earlier about, what do you get from an affiliation? So, you get a UCL email address. We get to use Zoom for free. We get software licenses to use EndNote, Starter, SPSS, you name it, Office. So there's lots of valuable resources there as well.
We have every journal ever. And what's the best thing is that when it comes to like institutional login, the example it always gives is UCL. And it's just like, yeah, like that's nice.
And also the one strong benefit is, depending where you are, obviously, but open access fees, universities will sometimes pay for that. And that's really beneficial in terms of how far your research will reach. Because, if your New England Journal of Medicine publication is hidden behind a paywall, half the world probably won't see it. So if you can get that paid for, your research is going to reach further and further. Just to quickly answer George's question about affiliation. So that really depends on your academic unit. So for instance, I know Imperial have a lot of funding for their trainees. I believe all of their trainees also get affiliations. UCL does not automatically affiliate you. It's just by virtue of the research at Aqua I do that we have an affiliation with our department. It's not a given for any academic block. But it's worth inquiring, with your supervisors if it's possible for you to get, journal access and all that. Because remember, when your university affiliation expires and become an alumni, you do lose those privileges and access as well.
Yeah, Ollie, just out of curiosity, because obviously you know how both Alex and I are affiliated, but how were you affiliated with the School of Medical Education?
So I'm not actually sure how they do it for the rest of the SFP doctors here. So how my affiliation works is I am a training fellow, or what's called a training fellow, medical education, and so I'm a staff member within the medical school and a research associate. That's how that works. I'm not sure, although I imagine it's the case that it's that way, is that the head of the academic program is a medical school, not within the hospital. So I don't know. I would have to check. Feel as though that's the way it's probably done for all the academic doctors. Sure, I would have, and that's the way it is for me. I've not actually looked it up for any.
Yeah, but George, I would heavily email your supervisor and just ask, because I think you're entitled, as an academic doctor, to have some of the boons and benefits that you get with the title. And yeah, Ollie, you've already answered Joanna's question, I guess.
Yeah, I can only assume so. I don't know. But I can't imagine that it would be fair or excellent. So
I can quickly check. Because isn't Anna in it? She might be under the same deanery as you, right?
Yeah, Anna, I think is. But again, I don't know where her affiliation, whether it's which particular department it comes through. The person that I know is for myself.
Yeah, because one of her
because it's
most
not
recent
some for your
papers.
colleague.
No.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, that the affiliation is not straightforward that you're affiliated UCL. There is an application process. There is someone senior head of department, the dean, that needs to approve your application. You need to be affiliated with a division or a department within the university. So Aqua and I are affiliated with a division within UCL. We're not affiliated directly with UCL. It's kind of an umbrella term. So, depending on your academic block, is it in radiology or medical education, will determine where you can be affiliated. And then obviously, because it's different departments, are the seniors in that department supportive enough to get your application going, getting it approved, because they do take a while. There's paperwork involved. So just be aware it's not a given, but do inquire about it.
Yeah. Are there any more questions? Because it's 8:30 and we're mindful of sticking to time as well.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then next week will be week 8 and our final session of the 1, 2, 3 SFP series. We'll be going over, what's the most efficient way to rank your jobs. And we'll be doing this with a very, very simple application that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. We'll be going through, one of us will give you an example of how, we would rank the jobs based on our preferences, be it location, ordering, the clinical jobs, the academic jobs. So we'll give you a live example of how we did it, how we determined the order of our jobs in the application process. And then afterwards, we will discuss about, what happens when you get an offer. How do you accept an offer? What happens next? What happens to your foundation program and everything on Oriel? So do join us next week for our final session, and we'll see you then.
Yeah, please do fill out the feedback. Thank you, guys. Thank you.